Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just Chat. I'm your host, Uncle Dominic. Today, our topic is overcoming communications. Have you ever found yourself lost in translation or struggling to convey your thoughts to or understanding someone else's perspective? It's very difficult because in our day-to-day life, we have all kinds of words that struggling to escape from us, and we find ourselves tangled in this problem. But sometimes pretty simple. The answer is all there, but sometimes we're just not looking hard enough. Or there are maybe some difficulties that's causing us to think otherwise. So let's start today by inviting our guest, Sean Parker. Sean, welcome to the show.
Hello,
Hi,
good to
Sean.
be here. Thank you, Uncle Dominic.
All right, could you introduce
Can you hear me?
yourself to everyone a little bit about yourself? Could you share to
Sure.
everyone a
Yes,
little bit about yourself, Sean?
I'm Sean W. Parker. Yeah, I'm a writer, artist, musician. I have a stammer, which so I have an interest in communications, and I published a book just last year called "Compelling Speech: The Stammering Enigma," years after giving a TED talk on the subject. So, uh, as apart from the
All right, we seem to have a little bit um, audio issues now, but that's okay. Yeah, so Sean is a writer. He's wrote a books about his stammering problem, and I think he has a little bit overcome it by figuring the things that's going on. But let's say this stammering, does it happen to you, or does it affect your daily life as well? Does it cause problems for you? Sean, you there? Oh no, I lost Sean.
Dave, since I was
Oh, you had
speaking
it
here.
since you were 5. Okay. Like, does it cause a big issue for you?
Um, but we're going to have to reschedule this, Uncle Dominic.
It's not working. The internet is not working on your side. Hello.
I can't have a normal
Oh, it's
conversation.
terrible.
I can't hear you.
Okay. Well. Uh. All right. Well, let's try again another time.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean.
Hello.
Hey. Okay, it looks better now. It's a bit weird today.
It's
Yeah.
impossible, man. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. All right. It
I
looks
can't have a
okay
normal
now.
conversation.
Can
Okay.
Is it still lagging for you?
It seems okay right now. Touch wood. So I'm happy to go if you are, but
All right.
I
Let's
couldn't
go.
speak like that 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I noticed. Pretty strange. Maybe the world is revolving in differently. So anyway, let's just get to it. It looks fine for now. So could you introduce yourself
Okay.
again since it's working better?
Sure. Yeah. Right. Um, I'm Sean. I'm a writer, artist, and musician in the UK, in Britain, and I'm a person who stammers as well. I have been since I was 5, and just last year I published a book called "Compelling Speech: The Stammering Enigma," based on a TED talk that I did on the subject about 10 years before. So I actually do a lot of work in cultural theory and art, but now also I've gone to this thing that I do in terms of communication.
That's great. There's a question that I asked earlier. This stammering that happened to you when you were 5 until now, does it cause a big problem in your life or big difficulty?
It had done, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it had done before, until I had some speech therapy in about 2004, just before I became a English teacher in Istanbul when I went to live there for a while. And
Oh wow.
in that process, it kind of yeah, it sort of cleared itself up during that process until the point that it is now, where I have a stammer. I'm always happy to acknowledge that, but it's in a place where I can handle it. So,
So in this perspective kind of question, right? So would you say that this problem is your problem or this problem is the other people's problem?
um, well, if you're into the stammering rights area, it's not a problem at all. It's a difference. So I take a part of that on, but also I like to be able to play on a level playing field with the mainstream, with the rest of the world, who shouldn't necessarily have to make allowances for what 1% of people do. So whether it's a problem or not is sort of complicated. It's a bit more. Yes, it's a difference that people should acknowledge. But I personally don't like sympathy, so I don't really want the sympathy. I
Right.
just want to communicate on the same level. So it's a tricky one to answer that.
Yeah, that's true. The reason why I mention it is because I do know some people who stutter or stammer. Some of them actually, push themselves back out of society because it feels like society could not accept them and they could not understand it themselves. And I do know some people who actually step out of it mainly because they understand this is not a problem with themselves. It is just a difficulty that the people are having to understand them. But in reality, most people have problems understanding communications in the first place. I don't stammer, but there are people who don't understand me at all sometimes. So it's very difficult, right? So I would personally say this is not a difficulty or a problem. It's just a kind of mindset that people have to get through it. Like you said, you don't want sympathy, but there are people out there who shouldn't even think about this as a sympathy that I should be able to give it to you. It's more like I need to be able to understand challenges that people have in their daily life. What do you think about that?
Mhm. Yeah, it's like it's a progressive perspective of how things sort of should be, and
Mhm.
that's good. It's good to do things how things should be, but when we get older, as I've found anyway, is that I like to deal with things how they are, and out there people are sort of judgmental, and the power games that go on around the world are on a realistic level, and they don't care about any of our disabilities. So I like to try to integrate that into compassion. So trying to get the worlds of the compassion and the realistic together
Mhm.
is the challenge as I see it. So I like what you're saying, but in the real world, it's very difficult to maintain.
Of course there's going to be people out there who don't see the same way that we do, and which is leads to lots of problem, for example, like mental health problem for some people, and issues with um, I don't know, keeping a relationship going or things like that. But at the same time, you mentioned earlier that before you went to a therapy session or you had therapies or something, yes, or some support group, right? And this
Yeah, well,
does help
yes.
you.
Hmm. Oh well, of course.
Does it help you? Yeah.
Stammer is. Does it help you? Well, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of different therapies and different approaches. The one that I've found has been the most interesting and best, or two, is being open about it and honest, as we're being now, and also speaking,
Mhm.
which we're doing now. So the more we do, because don't forget with stammerers, they've got all of the English is pretty much in their brain. They're very bright normally, and it's all there. It just won't come out here in the conventional way. So the best way to handle that is to defuse the stress, because the friends that you were talking about earlier who've stepped back from society, that's sad, but they probably haven't got into the not caring about it stage, which is a part of the stage of going through the life with a stammer.
Mhm.
Is I think you get caring and just stammering away, and that's where I am, possibly a bit beyond it. The stammer will happen, but it doesn't stop me communicating, and that's a very helpful place to be, because speech isn't everything. There's lots of thoughts that go in behind it and things which are just as important as the speech itself. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because um, speaking about my friend, when he step out of society, he still is actually. But it is a problem. Like for example, I really want people to understand him. Like when he first, well, when he was my friend, we hang out a lot and we talked about it. But as soon as he step out of society, it's kind of a little bit difficult to try to approach him because in his mindset, he feels like no one really cares about him, even though I do, and that no one really cares about him. No one wants to try to understand him. And like you said, once you overcome, well, reach the stage where you don't really care about what people think, and this is great because you build up and you keep going and keep going. I'm saying this in the same way as learning a language. I'm not saying this is a learning a language a disability or anything, but I'm just saying it's similar to learning a language. When you first learn a language, you realize that people will start be judgmental of you because of the way you pronounce it or the way you construct a sentence, and it's very difficult to communicate it out if you keep on stopping and saying, oh, I said it wrong, oh, I said it wrong. But if you keep tumble along, keep moving along, eventually your language will be something of amazing. You could be a natural speaker, right? I put it in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is what we're talking about here is the etymology of how we learn to speak, isn't it? And what I, as you were speaking there, and we were thinking about how the perspectives of other people as you're learning to speak are important. I also think that the cultural of societies are important too. Where I come in Britain from a place which is quite um, paranoid, neurotic about how other people see people, and that's how the place buzzes along on a degree of intercultural sensitivity. And in America, though, things are much more individualistic. This is how I speak. If you don't like it, off you go, which is as the world, you could call that all kinds of things. And that I think it's very strong and confident and attractive. But also in other countries, that will be seen as rude and bullyish and bullish. Um, but it is what it is, as they say. And but there are just as many American stammerers as anybody else because there's all kinds of different characters within that society. So how stammerers are within the countries in which they live is also of big interest to me as well. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Like in Asian culture as well, it actually is it's frowned upon. Sort of, if someone has stammering here in Asian culture, people find you like, oh, I don't really want to hang out with this guy or this person. It's kind of like, yeah, and even at a young age, kids will come out and say, oh, it will kind of reach to a sense of bully in a way, and kids don't even know that it's bullying, but they're doing it because that's kids, right? So eventually when they what depends on when they grow older, and we'll see what happens, like are they able to overcome it or figuring out, and which is one reason me as a teacher or educator, when I teach language to my students, especially English, I want them to understand that it is okay to make mistakes. People have to accept you for who you are. So it's kind of like you said, American individualistic style, but at the same time, I feel like we sometimes need to have this kind of idea or this concept to build us to move along so that we can learn things quicker. Because if we keep thinking that this is a problem for us, then it's going to be forever a problem. I'm going to give an example. I have a student of mine when this was about 3 years ago, when he first started learning English with us. His English is pretty much, oh, I would say, terrible, super terrible. But I can see that he's trying, and right now, after 3 years, he speak pretty good. Uh, of course, he has still some of his problems, like stuttering with some English words here and there. But eventually, but he doesn't really care now. It's more like he's just going with it, with the flow. And this is great because for us teachers or anyone else, when we talk to them, we don't really think so much about a grammar. We just think that they are able to understand us and we can communicate well. So in this sense, I would say that we need to overcome this to get this kind of mindset. What do you think about this?
That was really interesting to listen to. Uh, um, when we're talking about how children grow up and how they speak and their own um, insecurities in what they're doing, uh, I can compare the experience you just talked to my time in Istanbul with the Turkish people, who
Hmm.
are also very into the traditional hierarchies of respect and dignity and doing things well, all these kind of things that you mentioned from East, from, and it's those things are at such interesting contrast because the traditional things have a value. I'm not the kind of postmodernist who wants to burn all that stuff. I think they have a value and they're very important and nice. It's just that when you ignore the least, um, if a person has a stammer, then it puts them down at a disadvantage for a while at least. And do we just say that's how that person is? Well, we we, we, we we can accept it, and it's a human right to accept it. It's the right thing to do, but it's also okay to overcome it and to go into fluency if that's what the person wants as well, because that is where the normality lies of people actually doing the work as opposed to the stammer being the subject. I don't want the stammer always to be the subject of what I'm talking about. And the kid that you're teaching English is only going to learn that English as a tool to be speaking about something else, usually, unless they're a poet, so which is fine. So it's like um, we are attempting to get, I mean, the fact that you have students, and I've had students where we're concerned about the degree of their English, of how good that is, and all the Turkish teachers were like that too.
Hmm.
It's as a native speaker, you're doing something you don't have to think about for ages. It's a thing that comes naturally, but to a stammerer, it doesn't actually come naturally in the same way again. So there's all these different levels of. I've got a special interest in because of the stammer, and also because of being a person who loves English. So I get all the different angles that you're coming from there, and that ability in his to actually speak the language and to develop inside it. It's dynamic.
Yes, of course. It's gonna be very difficult for me to say that I can learn this from experience because I don't stammer. Um, but it's also very, so it's hard for people like me to try to understand the difficulties of it. But I can try to relate to it with using different um, things that I've seen or heard in my life. But at the same time, I feel like as you come out and you share your talk in TED Talk, I actually listen to it. It's pretty good. There's a lot of great things I can learn from it. It actually also, I feel like in the same way it makes you stand out, and it makes the other people who are stuttering or stammering, that that they understand that there are ways to help them, and they could be just like you in the public and doing public speaking, like especially at TED Talk. I mean, there are gonna be people who, they know this problem, and like I mentioned, my friend who step away from society or push them aside, and this is terrible because at the same way this affect their normal life, which is the normalcy of everybody. But I see that this is a way that you are doing to help, so this is really good, and this is pretty successful, I would say. You mentioned there's a few things, like you're a poet, for example. Everyone, he's a poet, so I love poets, right, and poems and stuff. You are actually also an artist, so at the same time, you're sharing your artworks out there, and people tend to see a problem and they stick to the problem, but they don't see the person itself. So Sean himself is an artist, so you can actually look. I put a link down there on his YouTube, and then you can go to his YouTube link and go to his website and see some of his arts as well. And how does this help you in your life, like getting your art out there to show to people? And I've seen some of the testimony from your art stuff, and it's pretty cool. So, how does that have helped you?
Yes, thank you for those kind words. I art, expressive art is what I do, be it the music
Hmm.
or the writing or the pictures. It's just what I do. It doesn't help me do anything. It's just like breathing. So it's just a thing that I like to do. Um, the stammering stuff is a practicality of life. So it's just an interesting thing that I do as opposed to something. um, expressive. In when there's a problem out there, I find that it's great to make art about it because it's a different way for people to grapple with them and to integrate it into their lives, as opposed to just going with sympathy, which is not a terrible thing. It's just overdone, or compassion, or empathy, or being kind, because the be kind term has been absolutely upended by the progressive project. So we have this is a cultural theory that I do. It criticizes a lot of those things, including all kinds of be kind stuff, because there's a thing that says, "Oh, you shouldn't be kind. You should be brutal," in order for people to get over. Not possibly in a traditional brutal way that we might recognize from our youths, but
Hmm.
should be a bit more strict. You know, the Jordan Peterson way of things. Where am I going? Back to art, where it's like that's what's coming from the inside. It's what makes me feel better. I've got a compulsion to do it. If I have an idea, I need to act on that idea, or I can't rest. You know, that's what being an artist is about, and that comes in the poetry and in the paintings. And
Yes, that's what it is. That's what I kind of meant. And so, because some people are so focused on your stuttering, they forget that you are an artist. So you're expressing yourself in your art, in your poets, and especially in your music. And so, if people out there don't know it, there's a lot of big famous people, celebrities who have problems with certain things in their life, but we don't see those. We just see what they have overcome and what they are right now. So that's what I see you as, Sean, not just a person who stutter or stammer, but as a person, as an artist. And I see this, your expressive art is actually pretty good. And so this is what it is right now. So if you can move past the first stage of seeing someone, I'm not going to say compassion, I'm going to say we move stage of seeing the first layer of someone, and we can see what's inside the inner layer of someone, because that's what it is. And it's sometimes like when I teach my students, I should not see them as what they are if they're in front of them. I should see them as what they could become and what they can achieve on. I'm going to give an example of this, because communication is always a problem. So when a teacher, an educator, goes to a class, and you see the student as, you think him as a naughty student or someone who's rebellious, and that is the first layer we see. And then the way we communicate to the student, if we keeps focusing on their first layer, and then the way we communicate will be very different, probably pretty hostile, or probably not good, beneficial for the kid. But if we go in with an open mind and seeing the kid as there's a second layer and what he or she could achieve, then we could help them as an educator. And plus, when we go in, our manner of speaking, our manner of communication is actually very different. Will be actually more pleasant, and it'd be easier for the student to learn from us to communicate better, even though it's struggling for some of them. But then what we all know that students sometimes don't dare to speak up, because even though they have so much things in themselves, so putting it out there is actually pretty difficult.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And um, it's interesting that you talk about it in terms of the layers, because that is what every good sort of teacher has to understand: the motivations of where the student's coming from. You know, whatever the age of the student, they will have the barriers, the blocks, and their idea that I can't learn English, I can't do that. I've got the same thing with maths. I can't count. I can't count. I've been telling myself that since I was 17, to the point that I haven't tried again, which is sad, you
Mm.
know, because you sort of put yourself into a comfort zone of not being able to do something. And it takes the good teacher to go, well, do you want to try it this way? Or to teach them without them knowing they're being taught. That is the best skill of all and the hardest. But you just bring in those things in life or in whatever way that you can. And then you go, did you just realize that you did a whole of the sentence in English then? You know, that kind of thing is a skill and very joyful and absolutely about peeling the layers there.
I don't know if you know about this, but I think a couple years back on Britain's Got Talent, I love Britain's Got Talent. I don't know if you see it or not, but I remember there was a stammerer that goes on stage. I forgot it was he or she, and he was stuttering through all of his introduction, and but what got him like past the stage was his singing. She, I forgot he or she, I forgot it was. Anyway, she sang really well. That there's no stuttering in the song. So if we get past the front layer of seeing someone, we can see what the person is capable of. So this is amazing what the starter can sing so well. I have to look it up again. Um, but yeah, so this is an example. Like you said that once we figure out what to help us overcome certain things, we are able to do it. Maybe for example, I'm not built to be an online blog because sometimes I start with my words. I get problems with getting my words out there, but when I have conversation with my students or when I teach, I do not have any problems like this. But I guess in the same way, also means I need more practice. We all need more practice. We need to just keep putting things out there. Eventually, we can be better at what we do.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a process, isn't it? It's the 10,000 word rule of Neil Gaiman, is it? Of where if you do a thing 10,000 times, then you become an expert at it by
Right.
accident, and including speaking and anything else, and especially writing. The people that you were mentioning, the first one I think was Mr. Gareth Gates, who's a male, who won. Uh,
Oh, is it Gareth Getz? Okay, I have to. I don't remember. It's been a while back.
sorry, what he won was Pop Idol, which was the predecessor of America, Britain's Got Talent, and then there
Uh,
was a woman as well on BGT, I think, a few years later.
uh,
But with the Gareth Gates one, it was very culturally important because he got to like number two, and he was very much loved in 2001 or two, and his stammer was very intense, let's say. And
mhm,
when he went on the daytime TV, it would be a real block and the real kind of stammer where people go, "That's a stammer." Yeah, but then he opened his mouth to the voice of an angel, and people realised then these are two different processes in the brain. Speaking is
mhm,
one process, and the singing is another one. If you There's a technique where if you start to sing, then you can actually overcome the stammer. You can subvert it because quite a lot of us have difficulties at the start of a sentence. So if you subvert it at the start, then the rest of it might be a bit easier. So there's all these little tools that get us into reasonably less stressful speech, which is the best chance that we've got really to getting towards some fluency.
that's I guess that is the same way we can apply to our life as well, because where there's a goal in life that we have to get to, and it's not always a straight path. Like everyone's path is different, and then sometimes this path is difficult for a person, but if he goes a different way, he will get to the same destination, but maybe a longer way, maybe a much better way for him or her. So it's all very different. Like teaching in school is the same thing. Like I have the same lesson plan for five of my classes, but I have to apply it differently in all five of my classes because each class have 30 plus students and they're all different way of learning, and we have to get the majority on how each class evolve around me or how they respond to me and to be able to teach it well. And so and if they get the message that I'm trying to share or teach, and it's a success. But if they don't, then I have to go through a different route to get to the same way that I want in the end. And it's very difficult. This applies to life as well, to everyone out there. It's just normal. Like recently I had my son talking about his life and his difficulties that he's experiencing, and I can only share my experience to him about my life and how things happen, but not necessarily it will be the same way he's doing it. He may not like it. For example, I mentioned just yesterday, I believe, I was talking about networking. I told him networking is very important. Meeting people, having connections, talking to people is one way to get around in life. And he told me, I hate networking. I don't like to use this kind of resources. It was like, fine, I understand. So he kind of wants it to do things his way, approach things his way. And so it's fine. I mean, everyone has different way to approach in life. So people have different way to overcome their difficulties, but in the end it's all about overcoming it and getting there and being successful about it. That's what it is, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not particularly into networking at a certain time of your life, that might come into your life a bit later on. So, and as you roll, as you get older, you uh, take on all those experiences of how to handle the world, and you don't have to get rid of them all. You just store them up, and then you use them at the time that it appears to be appropriate. Like, as you say, you got 6 different ways to deliver a lesson, and if this particular class, there's no way you can teach them in the Socratic method of just getting, asking them questions, and because they're just not built that way, you have to find, that's my chosen way of teaching. But if that's not going to work, you have to find your way around it, and possibly into the teacher-centered way, where you were delivering info and they actually like it like that. And you can never tell. It can be a traditional way or a progressive. It doesn't all have to be massively progressive. But we're led to believe that's the only way these days, and not necessarily. You can do it in lots of traditional ways without slapping the child. It doesn't have to be like that. That's sort of
Mm.
traditionalism. It can just be anything that works, anything that gets the job done.
Speaking about slapping a child, it's a whole different world out there right now with education. Like teachers cannot do this or teachers can't do that, and it's difficult to get information across sometimes. But that's what it is, and it creates, I guess I'm gonna say, everything we do, there's a reaction, and there is good and bad out of it, no matter what. Even with communications, as we talk daily, there's gonna be good things that comes from it and bad things that come from it. Things, if people can understand us, what we're trying to convey, and there's good things from it and bad things from it. The way we say things can create all kinds of illusions out there for people. Maybe they're understanding things wrong, and so this is terrible in some ways. But I guess the best way we can get about with this is trying to figure out what we want as the outcome of this, because sometimes we're so focused on one issue, we're forgetting about the whole thing in general. um yeah, so you mentioned something similar like this in your TED talk. I don't know if you remember about it. Could you explain a little bit more about it?
Uh, but which angle do you mean? There was a couple of points in there.
um let's say all of the points. Just
Well,
pick one, just pick one if you could.
let's do it. Well, yeah, I see. Um, it was about how the TED talk was called Stammering and Creativity.
Mhm,
So how the two of those things are connected, and that also kind of gave itself to the fact that um, the creative mind will try to interfere with the logical processing of speech. So there's almost like a friendly war going on inside a bunch of some stammerers. It's not all terribly toxic and dark. It's just this kind of chaos of people trying to deliver things in a linear fashion, and the
mhm,
creative world scatterbombing that at the same time because it's not meant to be happening as far as it's concerned. So it was those things that were coming together. Like what you're talking about is um, having a cake, trying to make the cake from lots of different ways and the best way to make it. And that is what I was trying to put forward in the TED talk as well,
mhm,
which is
mhm,
um, what are the benefits we can get out of the way we speak. And that doesn't have to just be the stammer, though I was stammering through it. It was 10 years ago. I spoke
mhm.
differently. Um, but it's like, I suppose getting towards the fact that there are lots of different reasons for something happening and not all of them are bad is the essence of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it, right? At the same time, I feel like as well, because when people get too nervous, or people stammer or stutter, whether they have this problem at all, but that's what it is. And if we are able to calm ourselves, we can um, get things better out there, like mindfulness or anything. Like, do you do any kind of meditation at all to help you during your daily life?
Well, just before I answer that one quickly, just about the thing you just mentioned, you're more talking about clustering there as opposed to stammering, because a stammer is a block where it's very
Right, right.
very tense, and it's very much there, and it's like that proper disability. But the clustering is just more of a things getting a bit messed up, but they're not actually a disabling block. So there's a slight difference in how those two things both go together.
Okay.
So it, it's not always the tension that causes the stammer. It's not because people are nervous always. It's like, we could be talking to thousands of people now, either here online or live, or just you and I in a cafe, and I would still be stammering the same. So it's not necessarily the scale of delivery. It's about the
Mhm.
importance of the thing that I'm telling you. If you need to hear an address out of my mouth, and you need to write that down, I'm almost guaranteed to stammer because of the importance of you recording that. But right
Mm.
now, we're riffing on ideas. And so it's much less likely to happen. You see, that's the very strange thing about mine. And I've heard that some other stammerers are like that too. Um,
Mm.
with with the relaxation, I have done all that all my life because my dad was a drama lecturer. So in the 80s, as a kid, he was kind of teaching me the relaxation methods for getting on stage to get that good way of. But that's like a lifelong exercise, isn't it? Meditation and relaxation. And you do it like in different ways as you grow. Like your son will be doing it in a different way than I would now. I would get
Mm.
everything I could out of it now, but at that age, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, Dad. I'm just gonna, I'll get through this, and because your relationship to it changes, and you're just not quite there to be able to accept it in the same way. So I'm very into relaxation. I think it's a wonderful way of living and meditation, but also I don't do it like a religion. I wouldn't do it on a regular basis. I'm just not there in my life yet because I'm not, but I'm very open to it.
That's great. Sorry for my communications, miscommunication about the clustering, but because, like I
It's
mentioned
a
earlier,
teachable
it
moment. It's
doesn't
fine.
happen to me. So the things that I see is a little bit different in the ways that we do. Some people will see it very differently. People, so then people will be looking at things differently as well. But I feel like if there is anything out there that helps anything at all, like to make things better, it's definitely a need to try on, like for example, like meditation I mentioned. I'm not going to say it's amazing, wonderful, like we should do it every day, but there are people who, like you said, religiously does it very religiously, and it helps them a lot. That's a one way for me see things, that whatever helps someone, we should try at least and make it work somehow. um
Mhm.
you mentioned to me last time you had a book. um I forgot, was it that you have written a book, but there's a new book coming up, right?
Ah,
Oh,
that's
you
true.
have
Yes, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Could you tell us a
Uh,
little bit about
uh,
that?
yeah. It's called. Should have thought of a book's name that I can say before I gave it this title. The Delicate Balance of Reason is the name of it, and it's going to be published on the 20th of May, the day after my birthday, which is
Oh, excellent.
49, and that's the um, International Academic Freedom Day. I'm very into academic freedom, and it happens to be on that day. It's um, it's a bunch of cultural theory about the culture wars that we've been going through for the last 10 years, everything that you can think of, all in there, all written up, and eyes on the problems. And I'm not going away from anything, you know, controversial because I don't like to do that. I like to take it on, and it's all in there. Everything that we've been going through with Brexit here in the UK, Trump in America, the trans
Mm.
debate, the Middle East, not so much because that's quite new compared to the. Anyway, I go to every interesting part of culture that's been happening over the last 5 to 10 years in a delicate balance of reason. So I'm excited to see how it goes down.
Well, that's cool. Did you have any um short summary on how it actually happens, like why it
How
actually
what
happens,
happens?
like any kinds of,
It
like,
just cut out there.
culture war, yeah. For example,
Oh.
Brexit. Could you give an
Well,
example of why Brexit happened? Like, I don't
yeah,
live there,
sure.
so all I see is from the news or from people I heard of. So there's not so much of direct info that I can get of understanding why it happened.
No problem. Yeah. Uh, with regards to Brexit specifically, Britain is an island off a continent of Europe, but historically we have the empire and have a big historical past. And there are people here who are patriots, as we would call them, or the nationalists, if you want to be more harsh, who are very, very into independence of that country, of our country. And so they had had enough after 30 years of being governed by Europe from Brussels, from people we haven't elected. And it started to be realized over 2010 to from 2010 to 2015 that the rules were getting harder and weirder about farming and things like this and agriculture, and the nationalist spirit was going more and more. No, we want to choose who we're electing in, and
Mm,
the political parties were getting more and more polarized over that period, um, and the left over this period around the world are very highly funded by globalists, so
mhm,
or what are called globalists, elitists, and so these two forces of the national and the global are pulling away from each other until the referendum we had in 2015, and just over half the country said we want to be independent. So we left Europe as one of the first big country to do so after Greece, and then the year later, Mr. Trump came into power in America. So that state of we want to be independent came in over there without secession. But these independent things were happening. And so that's the kind of detail that I go into in this book and try to compare the stories of the countries with each other. It's a bit sort of limited to the Anglosphere and to Turkey, which I know about. But, it's because
mhm.
of where I am, where I'm from. If I started to write about Argentina or something, I'd just be shot down very quickly. You don't want to talk about things you don't know too much, do you? So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
for
it's
sure,
that kind of
definitely.
thing in politics.
It's like I guess
Yeah.
it's similar for me as well. When someone asks me, a student asks me, "What's Brexit, teacher?" I'm like, I can only tell you from my perspective on how I see things. It's not particularly about what people live there, how they feel, or that. But I can reassure my students that it is very similar to things that are happening in the country that we live in right now, which is Taiwan. And there is problems between people who are nationalists and people who wants to be, you know, be independent or be go back to where China was, and there's a huge debate about this kind of things. And I always convey to my students it's definitely some kind of miscommunication or communication problems here because people want to share their opinions about something, and their opinions are shut down immediately or is not seen as possible. For me, I feel like whatever that's helping the country in general, and that's what we should go for. But that's particularly only me, so I'm not saying that everyone should think the way I do. But I feel like if there is a certain goal in life that we need to achieve on, we need to work towards it, whether it is, well, whether it's good or bad, but definitely want things that's happened towards this. For example, I'm just gonna make it smaller scale for my family as well. Like the way I see things, my family moving towards a direction will be different than the direction that my wife is seeing the family goes to, and it will be definitely a different direction that my children are seeing their life is going through. Even though when whatever I decide at their young age is what I feel like our family should be, but as my children get older, they will see different paths and they will start to think that my way is not the right way. And so I feel like this is kind of similar to how the country is being run as well, where when I try to say something or I try to communicate something, it's taken out of context or it's a bit different in what the way they see it. And if I enforce it like a country enforcing my citizens to listen to me, then I'm a dictator, right? So something like that. What do you think about my situation here?
Yeah, it's a good analogy, perfect analogy. Um, I think that you hint towards the fact that if we want to have a change bigger than ourselves or our families, then it's good to just work on the part by parts. So the affect the things you can change, or ask questions of. The best thing a teacher can do is not to say you should believe in England or Taiwan, is to go,
Mhm,
why would you believe in England, Taiwan? Why would your grandfather? Those questions are great, and that gets them to think. And so, I mean, intuitive teaching, isn't it? And by that process, and them doing that with their friends and everything else, firstly, their friends are going to think they're super cool, and after that, they're also going to think they can have a mature political conversation as everyone goes forward. And that's it's the best thing for progress is to do things on a part by part basis, but not always about the grievance of things. It's not always because I've got no money and they've got all the money. That's only one part of the conversation. There's many, many more
Yes, yes,
things
definitely.
around it.
I feel like that's most of my conversation with my students nowadays, whether I have money or they have money or who has more money. And I always mention to my students that if we're comparing wealth, I'm pretty much the poorest among all of you because I have my money spent on my family, and my money is spent elsewhere compared to you guys, where you guys don't have families yet and you spend the money on yourself. And so wealth is very different here. And I would say I am poor, but you would say that you are rich because you are able to afford this kind of things. So it's kind of
Mhm.
different perspective. And I told my students most of the time, we shouldn't be thinking that at all. We should be thinking about what you want and what you feel happy about it. And recently, today, I'll say today, one of my students told me that he loves this instant noodle that he's having. And I was like, whoa, that is a pretty cheap instant noodle. I mentioned that it was cheap. And he's like, yeah, but I love it. And so there we go. And so it doesn't matter how much we spend on certain things, as long you like that thing, that is becoming your treasure in the same way, right?
Absolutely, it's about what you do with the money or whatever else. And competitive capitalism, if I may, is the problem there, where these things are about are you a better person because you've got more money? That is
Yeah.
a difficulty, and it's a difficulty all over the world. So that's not restricted to Texas or America or to Taiwan. It's the Saudi Arabia and lots of British deep culture and all kinds. So, but anyway, I'm not a social. I'm not here to proselytize socialism or anything else. It's
For sure.
about
Yeah.
how you try to encourage the kids and whoever else you're teaching to be just to think bigger about everything, and to get things away from money is always a good idea because it's so easy, money, but life is so much more rich than that. And
Hmm. Definitely. Well, thank you, Sean, for coming to the show. It was great to have you. It was. I must apologize again for the start of it all when we had some problems with technical issues with the internet and with audio and stuff.
technology.
But I had a great conversation, and I want to thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you. Thank you. We've had a great time. Good to get into the heart of culture.
For sure. Well, Sean, would you like to share an advice to all the young people out there, or to people who are having similar problems, how they can overcome it, or be like who you are now, or be successful in the future?
Well, if they want to be successful, don't do anything that I do. But that's just me being British about it. No, it's
Well, that's
uh,
what I
um,
say to my children all the time. You want to be successful? Don't be a teacher. Don't be like me. You know.
teaching. But whatever makes them happy doing is a good thing to do as long as they possibly can, because you know where you are. That happiness is an amorphous thing. It's not a real thing. It's a thing they sell in books. But doing something that makes you happy, that's different from happiness. It's the doing of it that will sustain you. So do it as long as you possibly can, and if that changes to whatever it is.
That's
That's
great.
my
Thank
advice.
you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. And for me as well, for everyone there, just to understand the situation, everyone has communication problems, no matter what. We just have to get past it, past the layer that we see, and then eventually we'll get where we want. There's many ways to get there, but there's definitely one way that suits you, make you better in your life, and the path that we pick. So I want to end this and tell everyone have a good night and have a great day. Please check Sean's website. It's link under the link down there, and his YouTube, and check out his books that is coming out on his book that is before. And do check out his TED Talk, and you can learn a lot of things from it, like I have. Well, thank you everyone, and goodbye. Goodbye, Sean.